It's my nerd world, and welcome to it, Depeche Mode, the podcast. We'll go ahead and make this one the official podcast for the week. Yesterday's breaking news podcast, we talked about the information that was leaked ahead of the Berlin press conference that took place earlier this morning. I'll share with you some of the music that was shared, the sampling of the music that was shared from the upcoming release. Plus, I grabbed a portion of the press conference that I wanted to play back for you and share with you my thoughts on. And we got a lot of listener feedback overnight as well that I'm looking forward to responding to. So let's go ahead and get to this week's show. Nerd World and Depeche Mode, the podcast. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Glad you are with another episode, and a very special episode. This morning was the press conference detailing, well, in as much as they did, the upcoming Depeche Mode album to be released in March of next year, according to Martin Gore during the press conference, Memento Mori, and details about the upcoming world tour. Although I should say tour, somebody had reached out via TalkShowNerd@gmail.com and made a comment that it isn't technically a world tour because there wasn't an Australian date listed, of which we've talked about quite a bit on the show. So let's start off here. I want to play for you. We played a snippet of one of the songs at the intro, but I want to go ahead and play the sampling of the music that was shared there in its entirety. I'm glad we got something, and the way that I'm approaching my thoughts on the press conference in and of itself is that I'm just overjoyed that the band is moving forward. I know there's been complaining going on the Halo forum, and not necessarily complaining, but just fans that are being somewhat critical on a couple of different fronts, and I'll share with you my thoughts on that. But at the end of the day, as Dave Gahan likes to say so often, again, I'm so pleased that Martin and Dave have made another album, in the wake of Fletch's passing, and I have a few more thoughts to share on that. So I have two clips here. One of them you heard, but it's a little bit different. Essentially, this is the 2 minutes that we received of new music from Memento Mori. A lot of thoughts going around on the forums about whether or not this is completely mixed yet. How finished is it? I remember when they released Angel ahead of Delta Machine, when they held that press conference, and we got the full song of Angel and the video, the black and white video that went along with it. I remember thinking that was a demo, and much to my surprise, that was the completed song. And I think it had a lot to do with one of the complaints that I hear so often, and that is just the drums that are used on more of the or the most recent releases by the band, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. I love Angel, to be honest with you, and I was fine that was the finished product. So my guess is what we're hearing in these samples is going to be pretty close to what we'll hear, if not what we'll hear on Memento Mori. There has been some debating on just how many tracks we're hearing in these snippets. Clearly, the latter portion of the sample that we heard is a song and sounds something that could be a lead single based off of the chorus. And the beginning part of what we'll play here sounds almost like an intro to a song. And I got this vibe of layering going on, almost like there was a couple of songs that were on top of each other. So I've broken it up into two different snippets for you here, and I'm sure you've heard it already, but just for the sake of having it on the podcast, here's the first portion of the sampling of music that we heard from Depeche Mode at the press conference from the album Memento Mori. So listening to that again, it sounds like that is one track, and I'm always hesitant to sort of to what part of a song that could be. When they've released snippets before, I've often been surprised of exactly where within the song it actually is placed, and how much different, obviously, the full track ends up sounding, specifically over the Exciter samples. I remember when we got the Exciter samples, and to a lesser extent, Sounds of the Universe. But I was one of those fans that went and created mixes based off of the sampling of the tracks that we got from Exciter. And I can still hear those mixes and those snippets when I go and listen to the album. And I think that's definitely going to be the case with the latter half of the sampling of music that we received, where if you're like me, you're probably going to be listening to it a lot. And typically when that happens, it kind of gets burned into your memory. So when you hear the completed track, it's a little bit jarring. But that's the joy of being a hardcore Depeche Mode fan. So here is the second part of the sampling of new music that was played at the press conference. This was one of those moments in hearing that particular sample where it really did give me goosebumps. That hasn't happened every time I've heard a sampling of new music from the band, even if it's just a small snippet. Didn't happen with me personally when it came to Sounds of the Universe, or to an extent the Exciter samples either. But that particular sample, I really, really enjoyed, and it also got me thinking about expectations when it comes to hearing new Depeche Mode music. And I'll speak for me. I imagine that for many of you listening, you're probably the same way as I am, but I'm not going to assume that's the case, and I'll just speak for me personally. Whenever there's the potential of a new album, we know that Depeche Mode's working on something new, I think there's always this sort of expectation that, is it going to be, dramatically different? Is it going to harken back to what we've heard before in the past? Maybe, one of our favorite, Depeche Mode releases from before. Are they going to go and change it up drastically? And not in a negative way. What they played and the comments that they made really brought my expectations back down to earth. And again, not in a negative way, but it reminded me that this band has a process. And regardless of how much longer they continue to go and make music, I think that they are very much in a place where they're comfortable making a very specific type of sound. Now, it's varied, obviously, from album to album to album in certain ways, but typically you hear a Depeche Mode song, and that's a Depeche Mode song, and that's what's made them special all these years. So even going into thoughts about Memento Mori after, yesterday's sort of whirlwind of information that we got and thinking, what is the new music going to sound like? I hear that, and it's not all that different from what we've heard in the past. I've read several people commenting that they got Sounds of the Universe vibes. I didn't necessarily get that. I didn't really get vibes to any recent releases. What I got were specific Depeche Mode vibes. It didn't necessarily remind me of any other albums that have come out as of late. It just reminded me, okay, that's Depeche Mode. And Depeche Mode does Depeche Mode music. It changes and it shifts and it's a little bit different and it's lyrically different. And sometimes, as somebody had emailed me, I hadn't thought of it this way, but sometimes it looks outward and sometimes it looks inward. I'm kind of with the person that emailed me, and I'll share that with you in a bit. I prefer the inward-looking Depeche Mode other than the outward-looking Depeche Mode. But when all is said and done, Depeche Mode music is Depeche Mode music. And I found comfort in that. Listening to how atmospheric the beginning portion of the sample was got me excited as well, as did the comments from the band itself. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play, I've got about 7 minutes here of the press conference, and I chopped it up and edited it. And I'm going to play the comments, and what I might do here is kind of stop along the way and share with you my thoughts as we work through this portion of the press conference. I pretty much cut out anything relating to the tour. There'll be plenty of time to talk about that. Tickets will be going on sale here in the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure where I'm going to go see them yet. I really want to see them on the first leg of the U.S. tour. Unfortunately, the dates of which I would want to go are falling on weeknights, and I hate that. So Chicago is a drive away from where I live here in Minneapolis. I could make the drive. That's where I saw them on the Spirit Tour, on the second leg of that tour. But I also have family, and I grew up in Los Angeles, and so I'd love to be able to go to L.A. to see them at the Staples Center, but unfortunately that show takes place on a weeknight as well, so I'm looking at Las Vegas too. So from a personal standpoint, I got some decision-making to do when these tickets go on sale here in about a week or so. But I cut that portion of the press conference out. And before we get into it, I want to make another comment. I know a lot of people were underwhelmed at the nature of the press conference, and I understand where that's coming from. I am not familiar at all with the woman who hosted the presser. I do agree with everybody whose opinion is that it came off as very clunky and disjointed, and that for the band to have flown from LAX, of which I shared a video on Twitter yesterday. If you follow me, at @MyNerdWorld is the Twitter handle I'd like you to follow. I'm also at Jon Justice, Jon, but at @MyNerdWorld is the one that I use more often. There was a short video put out of Martin and Dave arriving at LAX before taking off for Berlin. I'm really kind of surprised that the press conference was as short as it was, and I too was somewhat disappointed in the way that the line of questioning went for the band. And it's something that I simply don't understand when it comes to promotion of not just music, but also film. As a Star Wars fan, I get frustrated when we have a new piece of content coming out, whether it be a live action show or a movie, and you could talk to the content creators and ask a lot of really relevant questions that don't give away anything of what's to come. And this is one of those circumstances where I think any number of the press in the audience, even some fans, and I'll speak for myself. I've been doing radio for 27 years. I know if I were sitting there and interviewing the band and say I had 15, 20 minutes or a half hour, I know there are a myriad of questions that can be asked about the creative process without giving anything away about the direction of the album, inspiration for the album and things of that nature. And so I do agree that the press conference was a bit clunky with regard to that. However, I think both Martin and Dave made up for it in what they added and the comments that they made. One last thing before I start the audio. At the tail end of the press conference, and Dave Gahan did mention that James Ford was producing the album again. I'm excited about this. It sounds like, as I mentioned before, this is a more inward-looking album in terms of the lyrical content. They get into that a little bit in the audio that I'm going to share with you. But I also really did like James Ford's production work on Spirit. Well, it certainly isn't my favorite Depeche Mode album. Again, sort of back to this little commentary of outward versus inward. I didn't care for the fact that it was as outward-looking as it was and political as it was. I did think that from a music standpoint, I really liked the production work of James Ford. So considering what we know so far about the album and potentially the theming of the release, I'm excited that James Ford is again working with the band. All right, so let's go ahead and get to a bit of the press conference from this morning in Berlin.
Well, we're quite far into it now, the actual recording process. We've got all of the tracks finished kind of for the album without them being mixed. And as you can probably kind of guess from the title of the album.
How did it feel to be back in the studio?
It was really good. We had a really good time together, sort of doing it. We started working on these songs. I mean, the writing probably a couple of years back.
Most of the songs I understand were written during the pandemic, so before Fletch died, and you were always planning on recording this in the summer, starting recording.
Yeah, that sort of changed.
If anybody can tell me, I suppose I could look it up for myself. I got a busy day ahead of me once I get done with the podcast today. Who that woman is, I know she's a friend of the band, but it seemed like a really odd choice and I assume because she's a friend of the band, because she clearly has some inside knowledge here, and she's American. So she clearly has some inside knowledge of the band and what they've been working on. So if anybody can clue me in, and again, I can do my own homework, but I would like to hear from you as well. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Before we move forward, I do want to make a comment on what we've heard so far. And this kind of goes back to the fan speculation aspect of it. And again, I'll speak for myself. I guess, from a fan's point of view, and following the band and reading, every little bit of material I possibly could, watching every documentary about Depeche Mode over and over again, you like to think you pick up on what their process is. And yet, I guess I tend to forget in my excitement of a new Depeche Mode release. And the band has, as I mentioned before, they have a process. And they seem to do the album, do the tour, wrap up, and then they take time off. And then at some point in time, the creative juices get flowing again. Martin and Dave start writing songs. They share songs together. They probably have a conversation about whether or not they're going to make another album. They say, okay, let's go ahead and move forward and do that. And then they do that. They'll talk a bit about the passing of Fletch, and this is what kind of, I think, threw off a lot of my thought process about where the band was, because I think what we're going to find out is, and Martin mentions this. I mean, they're at the mixing stage of the album, so they have been working on this for quite a long time. Myself as a fan, when Fletch died, and a lot of the commentary that I read from fans as well was, what's going to happen with the band moving forward? Are they going to continue to move forward? And I think that, and again, I'll speak for me. As a fan, I made that too complicated. It's fun to speculate, and you wonder what the impact it's going to have, but I think that what we're hearing is that, yeah, Fletch unexpectedly passed away, tragically, but life goes on. They were working on material. Fletch unexpectedly dies, and it's as simple as we're going to keep moving forward. And we'll be, it'll be the two of us. I really do get the vibe that that's that's what happened. I mean, maybe there was a further conversation, but I don't think. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think there was ever a question that they were going to move forward. I think Fletch passed. They probably took some time to grieve and then continued working again. And I'll speak from my own experience to that, just briefly. And if you've been listening to the show, you know that, Fletch passed away, and then, about a month or so later, while I was in the hospital recovering from a third open heart surgery, my best friend unexpectedly passed away in his home. I was still recovering in the hospital. And not only was he my best friend, he was also the co-host on the radio show that I've been doing here in Minneapolis for 6 years. And before that, we worked together for 3 years. He hired me in Tucson, Arizona back in 2008, worked with me for 3 years, left and came here to Minneapolis. We remained best friends until in 2016 we got back together again to do the show here, and we had been doing it for 6 years. When he passed away, there was never a question that I was going to move forward. Now it's different. I need to have a full-time job. I have a family to support, but it was, as soon as I'm recovered, I'm going to get back on the air, and I'm going to be the host now, and I'm going to move forward. I grieved. I miss my friend every day, but life goes on. And that, for me personally, this album already means a lot to me, and I can't wait to hear what they've come up with just from a personal standpoint.
A lot of things that we were doing at the time, of course, Fletch passing, but so Martin and I had been communicating and sort of sending some things back and forth to each other. I'd sort of, with my own few things that I had, played very badly on a guitar and sing into my iPhone, and I'd send it to Martin, and then he'd send it back with his beautiful angelic voice on it and lots of other bits and pieces, and it suddenly would become more of a song. And Martin sent me a whole bunch of songs. I think at first about 6 songs or something that he'd been working on. So I started sort of singing them or getting used to them. We got together the first time in just for a couple of weeks, I guess a few months ago now.
Yeah, something like middle of July, I think it was.
Yeah.
But one thing I think it's important to say is that all of the songs and even the album title was kind of decided before Andy passed.
Well, you can say the title of the album.
So the album title is Memento Mori, which means remember you will die.
Remember that you must die.
Or you must die. Will die, must die. Yeah. And it sounds very morbid, but I think you can look at it very positively as well. In that live each day to the max. I think that's how we like to interpret it too. And
Dave, what did you think of the title when you heard it?
It was around sort of the same time Martin started to send some of his songs. He sent me first sort of 6 demos of songs that he had written, and we were just talking when we started to talk about what we feel of some of the songs or the direction we might want to go in, and Martin said, I actually had this idea for a title, and I liked it immediately. I just think the direct translation as well is sort of, it was something, wasn't it? It was like that you told me the sort of history where it was first. What was the first? It was Roman times.
Roman or earlier, I think.
Maybe even earlier.
They used to walk behind an emperor or something, after he'd won a great victory, and somebody would walk behind him saying "Memento Mori."
So sort of humble and remember that you must die. Also,
it's got a new poignancy also. What with Andy gone?
Yeah, we took on another. I guess it took on a. I mean, all the songs. Once I started singing as well, for me anyway, in the studio, at Martin's house. Yeah, of course, as songs always do, as you perform them, even over years and years, songs that I've been singing for years, they always take on different forms depending on what's going on in your personal life or what's going on in the world, and I'm sure it's the same for all of you too. They represent different times, and some of these songs, of course, you can't help but reflect. And when we were in the studio together, many times we would joke or things would come up, and of course we missed Fletch. Fletch would comment on something, or he would, and those things, those are the things that you miss about someone when they're not there. They're things that you kind of take for granted when they are there. So yeah, I think I speak for Mart as well, and so, he was really missed in the process.
He was there in spirit.
I think so. Some of the time, there was one, I got to say, I was like, just recently, I was sitting outside in my hotel. I had a little balcony, and I was sitting sort of watching in the morning, and someone in a room near me was smoking a cigarette. And and many times I've been there before, like working at Martin's place, and for a moment I sort of like expected to hear Fletch say, "All right, Dave," because he was like in the room next door or something. But little things like that,
I'm sure, Martin, it's the same for you.
Yeah, I mean, because we recorded at my place mainly, and then in another studio in LA that we've never worked in before. We'd never worked at my place as a band. So, and because I was used to going there every day anyway to work, it didn't seem so strange. I mean, obviously it was a bit strange, but not so, as strange as it would have been if we'd have worked in studios that we worked in before. But when we came to Berlin on Saturday evening, and I walked into the hotel and I saw the bar, where I'm so used to seeing Andy, like every single time we stayed in that place.
Hand.
Yeah, so, you just used to seeing him so much there. That really hit me.
Mm. Well, one thing on this album that you'll all be surprised is that Depeche are going to be breaking with...
Yeah, I mean, right now we're, as Martin said, the focus is on finishing the record, having it finished. And so this was...
What she was saying, she was saying there was they were breaking with tradition and starting off with a few dates in North America on the tour before they went and we're going to travel overseas for the second half and the larger half of the tour for now.
Kind of, we had to sort of jump out of how we were working together to do this and to talk about, and sort of, of course, thinking about how we're going to, perform some of these songs and how they will be integrated with songs that you all know already. Anton Corbijn, of course, is already working away on lots of different parts of the design and photographs and ideas for.
And they talked briefly about having something on the tour that would be in tribute to Fletch. There were some songs that he liked, that he was a fan of, that they played, and so they were working on some ideas for the tour to honor Fletch. To what Dave was saying, and again, I hope you don't mind my sharing. I was actually watching Spirits in the Forest last night, the movie, and really enjoying hearing from the fans in that film their own viewpoints and perspectives, on the band. So I share that a lot on the show. So I mean, you can decide to skip forward or not. But to what Dave was saying about smelling somebody smoking a cigarette in a room next door, and then expecting to hear Fletch's voice, or Martin had mentioned about walking into a certain hotel in Berlin, and typically that's where he would find Fletch all the time, and he didn't see him there. It reminded him of that. With my friend Drew, who passed away, we would text throughout the day, every single day, about everything and about anything and everything. We had similar tastes in movies and Not so much music to the same extent. He liked Depeche Mode. His wife loves Depeche Mode. But certainly our sense of comedy, we were very similar. And we used to get into what I like to call gift battles, trying to make each other laugh. I still find myself reaching for my phone when something comes up that I want to share with him, or a listener reaches out and I want to, talk about something or a story that I found for the show. I'll still reach for my phone to go and text him, and and then I'll get that pause of, oh yeah, I forgot he's gone. Getting back to, before we get to listener feedback, and again, I'd love to hear from you, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or if you're listening up on YouTube, you can leave a comment there as well. But getting back to a bit of what I was saying before about expectations, listening back to that portion of the press conference, I kind of zeroed in on what it is I wanted to say. As a fan, Fletch passing away, the band getting older, not knowing if this is going to be the last album or not, for me, expectations rise. Are they going to do something special? Is it going to sound drastically different? That's what I meant to sort of drive at. And again, to use the phrase that Dave uses so often, at the end of the day, no, they're doing what Depeche Mode does. They have a process. They made an album. It's got a title. There's a theme to it. They know based on the data how what size of venue they could pack depending on where they're traveling to, and they're going to go on tour. This tour will end. They'll take time off, and at some point they'll make a decision on whether or not they make any music again. And I find comfort in that. I find joy in that. That's how life, moves forward. Memento mori, right? Remember, you will die. Live every day to its fullest. And they are living, and creating music like they always have. And I don't think they have any expectations moving forward. Right now, they've made an album. They're finishing the album, and they're going to go on tour. This is what Depeche Mode does and what they've been doing for decades now. And, thankfully for us, we get to hear new music. And that's all that I can ask for. And that's all that that's all I ever wanted, right? Is for Depeche Mode just to make more music that I can enjoy. All right, we've got quite a bit of listener feedback from overnight that I want to share with you. A friend of the show, Stephanie from Germany, writes in, I really enjoy sharing Depeche Mode with you. I've been thinking about the term memento mori, and of course it fits with Depeche Mode, the sad death of Fletch, and maybe it also seems that we should be sure that our band, our heroes, won't exist forever either. No, they will not. Maybe it means at the same time that it will be their last album and their last tour. Depeche Mode often play with such terms, and interpretations are varied, but are also left as is, and I love it. There are still 4 hours until the press conference. I'm very excited. I heard the producer of the album could be Rick Rubin. Let us surprise. I hope you're doing well, and I think it's exactly the right time for a lot of Depeche Mode. Thank you for sharing your love for this extraordinary band with us and for doing this podcast. Wishing you all the best. Greetings from Germany. Funny little moment that I want to share from Stephanie is that there's a handful of people on Twitter that will like some tweets that I put out from Depeche Mode, and I don't have a huge Twitter following or anything like that, but I kind of consistently get tweets from one particular account. I only realized yesterday that it was Stephanie, and it made me laugh. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that you were. I think it was Snow in June, right? Is that the title? I don't have my phone here. I'm not going to pause it to go. But I think on the, at least on the name, not the handle, she has Snow in June on there. And if that's wrong, I apologize, Stephanie. You can correct me. I'll get it right on the next one. The Rick Rubin rumor came about because Martin mentioned in the press conference that they recorded in his studio in Santa Barbara. They're also going back to New York to record. I think that's what they said, to wrap up the mixing on it. And then they also said they went to a studio they hadn't gone to before, which is in Malibu, I believe, in Southern California. Shangri-La. That's Rick Rubin's studio. And as Martin mentioned in the press conference, he wasn't there at the time. They just decided to use his studio. Thank you, though, Stephanie, as always, for the email. Edgar Gonzalez writes, I can't believe they are a duo now, like the Pet Shop Boys, Erasure, like Tears for Fears. Kedrick writes, you must be happy with the DM tour announcement. The closest to me will be Staples Center in Los Angeles since I live in Palm Springs. I'm glad they're trudging forward. 2-minute warning. Favorite song. Interesting choice. Also, he asks if you're not super busy, but if you get a chance, check out my Depeche Mode episode. Yeah, please do. And I did, Kedrick. I'm enjoying what I've been listening to. If you head on over to Spotify, you can check out World of Music podcast. That's a Kedrick's. Excuse me, I had an N in there. I didn't mean to. That's Kedrick's podcast on Spotify. So I would encourage you to go and check that out. Speaking of which, I was going to mention it on yesterday's show, and I completely spaced on it because I was heading down a road to talk about it, and I didn't. But if you have not heard, it goes back to 2017. Dave Gahan did an interview with Chris Hardwick, who was a DJ on K-Rock for a number of years, was on the Nerdist podcast for a long time. Now he has his own podcast, doesn't put up podcasts as frequently as he used to. ID10T. If you look up, though, Dave Gahan in your podcast feed, I found it on iTunes. I've listened to it a few times now. Back in 2017, in promotion for Spirit, there's about an hour-long podcast that Dave did with Chris Hardwick, and it's fantastic. There's not a lot of backstory or details about Depeche Mode, but Dave goes off on these incredible tangent stories about him as a kid, and the start of the band. They do talk quite a bit about what life was like at the time when he hooked up with Martin and Fletch and Vince when they were composition of sound. Definitely go and check out ID10T, Chris Hardwick, and the Dave Gahan podcast. It's absolutely worth a listen. I was desperate to listen to Depeche Mode things yesterday, and I wanted to hear from the band. There's also one, and I can't remember the guy's name specifically, and I apologize. There's also one with Martin Gore that was done a couple of years back. I want to say Rome? Mike Rome? That's probably wrong. That's somebody else. But if you look up Martin Gore, also in your podcast, whatever you listen to podcasts, you'll find one there. You don't find a lot of them for Martin, but there's an interview that was done with Martin a few years ago that is also as equally as compelling that I would definitely encourage you to go and check out. All right. Let's see. German Dimplez writes, Season 4 of The X-Files, and if I pronounced that wrong, I apologize. Season 4 of The X-Files had an episode titled Memento Mori. Remember that death is inevitable. I truly loved X-Files. I truly loved Depeche Mode. Hopefully I can find someone to go to this concert with me. I don't think you'll have a problem. But depending on where you are, if you need any help, I'd be happy to go and put out feelers for you. If you let me know where you plan on seeing the band at. Michael E. Tennant writes, I remember how weird it felt not seeing Alan photographed with the band when he left. Now seeing just Martin and Dave is surreal. Yeah, I agree with you. It really is. And I felt the same way the first time when we saw the band without Alan, and now it's just Martin and Dave. And I absolutely agree with you. It does feel surreal. Lastly, Grey Room writes, and this is what I was referencing earlier in the show. I was hoping the next album would be more inward-facing as opposed to Spirit, which was very outward-facing. With a title of Memento Mori, I'm going to venture a guess that this will explore our own lives and our own mortality, but so very exciting to consume and discuss new material. Yeah, I'm just, like I said, when all is said and done, I like what I heard. I love hearing about the creative process, and I'm just thrilled that we're going to get new Depeche Mode and a new tour. And Dave shaved! It's a petty thing for me, but I don't like Dave's mini mustache. It's neither here nor there. I just never cared for Dave's facial hair. I didn't mind it in the Songs of Faith and Devotion time. I thought that look was interesting. I didn't like what we know now of where Dave was at that point in his life, for crying out loud. But I'll wrap on this again from a personal standpoint. Not only has, Depeche Mode just meant so much to me throughout my life and been such a friend to me, and even now. There's so much inspiration there when you consider everything the band's gone through. And, certainly losing Fletch and moving forward. But Dave, I've shared my health issues on here. I'm not going to go get into them now, but you can't help but, think about your own mortality, which is my memento mori, really hits home for me. But, considering everything that Dave's been through, and not just with the heroin addiction, but also, I don't want to discount the fact that he was dealing with cancer on the Sounds of the Universe tour. I went back and watched the documentary for that, and I had forgotten that they had to actually cancel the show right before they were going to go on live because he got sick and he ended up dealing with cancer and something he was going to deal with the rest of his life. And apparently he's fought it and it's not an issue. But when you just consider everything that he's gone through, and here he is, still creating music with Martin. It's just incredibly inspirational. So that's it. That wraps up the show for this week. Thank you so much for checking it out, and to all the new listeners. Got a record number of downloads yesterday. So I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard, and you'll go back and listen to previous episodes. I talk a lot of personal stuff. I promote my science fiction series because selling books is hard. I know I've had some people comment on the reviews, which I don't go back and read very, very much, but I had people commenting on there. He talks about his books too much. Hey man, I wrote a 7-book science fiction series, and I put a lot of Depeche Mode in that first book, and it took a lot of effort to write those books, and I'd like people to read them. So if you're interested and you like science fiction, head on over to Amazon.com. Look for EMBARK or Jon, Jon Justice. And EMBARK on Amazon. You'll find my 7-book science fiction space opera series there. Also at mynerdworld.net. I covered it at length on yesterday's show. Did the full pitch. I won't do it this time around. The show's gone pretty long, longer than I expected, and I'm hungry for lunch. So, but if you like sci-fi, and clearly you love Depeche Mode, I hope you'll check out my science fiction series. I don't do Patreon. It's the way that you can go and support the show. They're available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. If you read ebooks, too, the ebooks are heavily discounted. You can get book 1, EMBARK book 1, for just 99 cents, and you can pick up the first 3 books, which create an entire trilogy and a story arc. You can pick up those for a discounted price in ebook for just $3.99, which is a big discount if you buy them all separately. So that wraps up the show. I'll be back again probably next week to talk a little bit more and share your listener feedback, most likely. So please, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com or leave a comment up on YouTube. As always, I hope wherever you are listening to Depeche Mode, you are happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. And I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.
Force will be with you.
Ha! That's the wrong outro.
My nerd world.
Oh, I was so happy. I thought I just had my mouse in the wrong spot. I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.